Hey guys, just so we're all on the same page. So tonight, Lauren, Jackson, Andy, Andrea, Brody, and I need one alternate. So Joy, are you willing to sit tonight and vote? You can't hear me? I'm unmuted, I thought.
I can hear you.
Okay, they can hear me.
Fine.
So Joy, could you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay. Joy, are you okay with voting tonight?
Yeah, I am.
Okay, awesome. So it'll be Lauren, Jackson, Andy, Andrea, Brody, and Joy tonight. All right. And then we'll start in 1 minute. Are you guys? I always like bike lanes. We'll start in 1 minute, guys. We're just waiting for them to get everything queued up. All right, guys. I'd like to welcome everyone out to the Thursday, May 21st, 2020 regular Planning Commission meeting and call this meeting to order. And we'll have a roll call. We do have a full quorum. We'll have Lauren, Jackson, Andy, Joy, Andrea, and Brody on the Planning Commission sitting and voting. And then we'll also have Heather as an alternate that will be attending the meeting. At this time, just want to ask if there's any conflicts of interest on any of the items on the agenda. And hearing that there is none, we'll move on to item 2.3, which is a motion for approval of minutes for the April 16th, 2020 Planning Commission meeting.
I'll make a motion to go ahead and approve those meeting minutes. For
All
April
right, motion by Adam or Andy. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, guys, thank you. And then we'll move on to the administrative items. We do have 2 items that are on for public hearing, and I will read the public hearing. Actually, I do not have. Okay, I do have it on here. Public hearings for this meeting will be conducted electronically. Any person interested in addressing the commission may submit a comment by emailing recorder@herriman.org or by visiting herriman.org /agendas-and-minutes, where there will be a link to join the electronic meeting to submit a written comment. Your statement will be read into the public record. All comments must include the respondent's name and the file number that is the subject of the comment. And then we'll move on to item 3.1, which is on for a public hearing as well, and we'll turn the time over to city staff.
There we go. Okay, everybody hear me okay? All right. The first item is preliminary plat for 60 condominium units, known as Parkside Phase 3. This is in the town center. You can see here just south of us here at City Hall. We approved this, the Planning Commission approved this a few months ago, approved the site plan and the preliminary layouts. Now they have to come back with a condominium plat in order to separate out each of the condo units so they can be sold as individual units. So again, this is the area here that we're talking about, Phase 3. So it's on the east side of the, I'll call it the Y Road. So there you go. This is what a condo plat looks like. It's very exciting. So again, these, and there's 6 or 7 of these. I did not include all of the phases that go through there, but that's what they all look like. Again, just divides out each unit. So again, these are 60 condominium units that were approved already in October. These are not any additional units from what was already approved. These are just the condominium plots for what was previously approved. Any questions?
Not seeing any. We'll now look to see if the applicant has any additional comments at this time.
So this is Brandon with Edge Homes. Can you hear me?
We can, thank you.
Okay, you got Brandon and Jaron, actually, both of us. So yeah, I feel like we just have the mirror image of what we presented to you guys about a month ago with Phase 1. So we're excited. Like Bryn was saying earlier, we submitted our building permits and should be getting those buildings in Phase 1 going, and we're super excited to kind of see everything that we've all been working on over the past little while. So finally excited to get those started. But anyway, this is the next phase, basically a mirror image of Phase 1. So, and I'll call it a U road, by the way.
Thank you, Brandon. Are there any questions for the applicant at this time? All right. If there's none, then I will open the public hearing, and I believe Wendy has one comment on this item, and we'll let her read that.
Yes, so far we have one. Can everybody hear me? Okay. My name is Parker Hansen. I'm writing regarding file number S2020-022. I am 100% against more condos or townhomes coming into Herriman Town Center. There is already a high percent of condensed living in the Herriman Town Center, and this should stop. Detached single-family homes should be the next phase of growth in this area with higher income families. Herriman City, we are the residents here, and we should have somewhat of a say how things proceed. I hope you take our thoughts and concerns seriously.
All right, Wendy, were there any other comments that have came in yet?
It looks like none have come in from people viewing the meeting, so nope, that's it.
All right. Then at this time, and first off, thank you, Parker, for your comments. At this time, we'll close the public hearing, seeing no more, and then we'll turn the time over to the Planning Commission for any additional comments. Or a motion.
Maybe just a quick note for Parker, just knowing that, let's see, I believe this was legally approved in 2008. Is that right, Wendy?
Brent, do you remember
Yeah,
when it
the
was
town
approved?
center, yep, 2008 is when the town center was approved for this number of units.
Master
Right.
plan.
Yep.
So the master plan and the development agreement were all approved in 2008. So unfortunately, legally, we can't change that at this point in time. So it's was legally approved 12 years ago. So that's so there's really not. So we do take it seriously, especially as new projects come online. But this particular portion of the city has already been legally bound to where it's at.
Thank you, Jackson. That's a very, very good point to add, and I appreciate you bringing it in to help answer Parker's concerns. Now, at this time, is there anything else relevant with comments to this, or do we feel like we can make a motion? All
Nope,
right, then we'll look for a motion.
All right, I'll go ahead and Make a motion to approve item 3.1, the request for the preliminary plat approval for 60 condominium units known as Parkside at Herriman Town Center Phase 3.
Thank you, Andy. Motion by Andy.
I'll second that motion. Oh,
And I believe that was Joy. Was that you, Joy?
that was me.
All right, we'll give that to Joy. Brody, sorry, next time we'll give it to you. And so motion by Andy, a second by Joy, and then we'll call for a vote. Lauren,
Yes.
Jackson,
Yes.
Andy,
Yes.
Joy,
Yes.
Andrea,
Yes.
and Brody.
Yes.
Thank you so much. We'll now move on to item 3.2, which is a request for a subdivision plot amendment for a lot line adjustment between lots 205 and 206 of the Cove at Herriman Springs, and we'll get remarks from city staff.
All right, so this is, like you said, up in the Cove at Herriman Springs. You can see the two lots here. And they are doing a lot line adjustment, and it's fairly obvious when you see it here. This is the existing lot line, and this is the existing fence line. So, and let me show you closer up here. So the point up on the street is basically staying in the same location. They're just moving it in the back here, sliding over to match where the fence has already been installed. And that's it. There's not a public hearing required for something like this between the two property owners. So this is on just for a decision. And like I said before, we'll work to change the ordinance so that maybe you guys don't need to see these anymore.
All right, thank you. Is the applicant here, and are there any additional comments that he would like to share? I do see Mike here, which is the applicant. And he's not muted. Maybe he's just listening in. All right. If there's if Mike, if you're having any technical issues or anything else like that, I believe you can make some comments on the side as well, just if you have any. If not, I'll turn to the planning commission. But if you jump back on, I'll let you make some comments. This one's pretty straightforward. So but I'll turn to the planning commission if there's any additional comments.
No.
No.
I'll make a motion. I'll make a motion to approve item 3.2, request for subdivision plat amendment for lot line adjustment.
All right, motion by Brody
Second.
and a second. Was that Andrea that time? Yep.
Andrea, yeah.
I don't get to see you say something, so I'm trying to make sure I get it right. So motion by Brody and a second by Andrea, and then we will call for a vote. Lauren,
Yes.
Jackson,
Yes.
Andy,
Yes.
Joy,
Yes.
Andrea,
Yes.
and Brody.
Yes.
All right, thank you. And so that was approved. Now on item 3.3, the applicant has requested this to be continued, but we will turn the time over to the city staff to just share if there's anything in addition that we need to talk about.
No, I mean, I don't think since the applicant's not on, I don't want to, you've got it in your packet, so I would certainly say, we've had this on several times. We've asked them to make some changes. So I would review what you've received. Feel free to email me and let me know if you would like to see any additional changes or, have any comments about it. They are planning to be back in 2 weeks on June 4th. And like we talked about previously, I will talk to them about the parking and have them be prepared with more details on the parking. And we'll be prepared to have Ryan Hales at the meeting as well to answer those parking questions. So unless you guys have other comments on this one, I'll just fly right through it. But they did add garages to the courtyard, so Adam should be happy.
We're all happy.
Everybody's happy. So just a motion to continue that one.
So if there's no other comments, from the Planning Commission, we will look for a motion to continue.
I'll make a motion to continue this until the next planning commission meeting.
All right, a motion by Jackson
I'll second.
and a second by Lauren. And we'll call for a vote. Lauren,
Yes.
Jackson,
Yes?
Andy,
Yes.
Joy,
Yes.
Andrea,
Yes.
and Brody.
Yes.
All right, thank you guys. Now the next item is a legislative item. It's item 4.1, which is a review of a revised Herriman City Transportation Master Plan. And we'll hear from city staff on this one, which is also the applicant. So I don't know, Brent, if you want to start or if you had someone else that was going to talk about this.
Yeah, I can start out real quick just to kind of go over the process. So again, a master plan, since it is an element of the general plan, requires the planning commission to have a public hearing and make a recommendation to the city council. So this is on tonight for you to have a public hearing, talk to the applicant, which is again, city. Bryce, who is an engineer with the city, will be on, as well as a couple of our consultants, and Bryce can introduce them for you. To go through this again, ask any questions, and then if have a public hearing, and then if you're ready to go ahead and make a recommendation to the city council, and then this will go on to the city council in a few weeks. So we can turn it over to Bryce.
All right, thanks, Brent. So yeah, we wanted to present our transportation master plan for the city of Herriman. This has been a process that we've been going through for about a year now. We started the process in June of 2019, and kind of a quick overview of the master plan. We take land uses for the city that are planned and current, and the existing land uses, and we use those to generate traffic analysis zones, or kind of sections of the city that account for the traffic for the land uses in that area. And then we model that to our existing road network that we have today. And then we project those models for 2030 and then 2050 to get traffic from, or traffic projections in those years. And so this master plan is just kind of a way to summarize that all and to put our plans into effect for the coming years, for the next 20 years, 30 years. It's really a long range plan, and it's built upon the Wasatch Front Regional Council's long range plan. But we have worked with our consultant, who is Parametrics, and Ian Kilpatrick's on the line to answer any questions if we have any along the way. From Parametrics, but they helped us put this together, put in our long-range master plan for our transportation network. And so a little background information: as we all know, Herriman has been one of the fastest growing cities for many years now, and it has not slowed down. As we know, it has just continued to grow, and even at a higher pace than in past years. And so because of this makes it so that we have to plan for our future in our transportation infrastructure and plan out if our existing roads are going to be sufficient, if we need to plan new roads or to widen roads. And so this master plan is hopefully going to help us plan for the growth that's coming in the next few years and beyond that. And so the first step, as I talked about, is to really get the land use of the city down before we can model anything. And so this shows kind of a little bit of a picture of the existing land use in Herriman today. And as I said, we started this in June of 2019. And so there have been some changes since then, but that was kind of our starting point. And if there were changes after that time, they will not be reflected in this model. We kind of have to draw a line of when we can say, okay, we're going off of this time period, and that was summer of last year. So there have been some changes since then to keep in mind. But this is kind of what we were working with as far as land use and employment in the city and in the surrounding areas. And then as many people know, Herriman tends to be a little bit of a commuter town. A lot of people drive to and from Salt Lake and live in Herriman. And so this shows a little bit of that, where there's a lot of people, it shows 50% are actually traveling only within 20 minutes. And so that's good to see that a lot of the people that live here are working close by. But we also see a lot of people work outside of Herriman. And that will cause a lot of strain, as we see on kind of the main entrances into our cities, such as 134th, 126 South, Rosecrest roads. Our main collector and arterial roads will see a lot of that traffic in the evening peak hours and the morning peak hours, because there's a lot of commuters going in and out of the city of Herriman. And so we also wanted to show the active transportation facilities. So this isn't a complete map. We've had some trails and bike lanes put in since this was produced. But this gives an idea of where we have sidewalk or paths for walking, and where we have some bike lanes for bicycles on the road, but also paths throughout the city where cyclists can get off the road and use a shared path, where pedestrians can also use that shared path. And so we're working on that. That's something that we want to be able to improve as a city, is to be able to get more bicycle infrastructure and pedestrian infrastructure throughout the community. We have great recreational facilities, and we want to connect to those recreational facilities with bicycle infrastructure, such as bicycle lanes and bike paths. And so that's something that we're looking forward to. And we actually just received funding from Wasatch Front to work on a dedicated active transportation plan, which will help us kind of reach those goals of connecting the city not only by vehicles, but through bicycles and other modes of travel. So we also take a look at where we may have some safety concerns with vehicles on the road. And so we created this hotspot map to really get an eye on where most of the crashes are happening on Herriman roads, or UDOT and Herriman shared roads. And you can see the majority of the crashes occur with our intersections with Mountain View Corridor. That is for a couple reasons. Obviously, the higher speeds create for a little bit less time to react and to slow down. And there are on Mountain View several hills that kind of block the view. There, for a lot of people that haven't been on Mountain View before, it's a little bit confusing how it's set up, how there's two separate roads where it's almost two separate signals attached together. And so that kind of hurts our safety numbers as far as left turns going when cars are incoming. We've seen a lot of those. And so we're working with UDOT to be able to create the safest intersections along Mountain View. They control the intersections, and so we do our best to coordinate with them to be able to create a safe environment in the city of Herriman as far as intersections go. We do have one kind of hotspot outside of Mountain View. If you kind of look at that map, it's 56 West, or Rosecrest Road, and 134th. It's one of our busiest intersections that's not a UDOT intersection. And so we're looking at improvements there. But as part of this plan, we look for improvements any way that we can to create a safer transportation network.
Now, I mean, it might be a little bit early because we're at the public hearing, but going back to, and I guess this map, and you'll probably have several of them, but one of my questions will be helping me to understand which roads specifically that are existing will have plans to be widened, because I think that's one of the points that overall the public can need to be aware of, that due to traffic and other constraints that these roads are looking like that we will be expanding them or widening them.
Yeah, that's a great point. That we have probably about 4 or 5 slides until we get to that, and we will show exactly what you're talking about, where we're adding new roads, where we're widening roads, and we even have a schedule for phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. And yeah, we'll get to that here in just a bit. So a little background on level of service. So this is how engineers and planners like to evaluate transportation networks, is by level of service. And so you can see on the table to the left a little bit of how we determine level of service as far as traffic goes. So a level of service is a measure of how congested a road is, or how much delay a user sees while driving on the road. And this is an interesting concept because normally we always aim to get a grade of A or better, right? But industry standard is to actually achieve a level D or higher. And so a level D service means that there's very minor delays. It may be congested, but everything's moving. There isn't any major delays. We are actually using our facilities to their capacity, but they're not over capacity. We're kind of using exactly what we've built out. And so a lot of people want to see that level of service A. Unfortunately, to be able to pull that off, we would be having to build kind of 7-lane roads all across the city. And to be able to have that free flow where you don't see any cars around you is just something that we would not be able to budget for, and we would really never be able to obtain that kind of level of service. And so all of the cities in Utah and most of the cities across the United States set level D as their kind of threshold. If they go over a level of D, that's when there are delays and that major improvements need to be implemented. And so this is what we have for the existing level of service. And I would like to note out on that, most of those are just roadway segments. So like a lot of questions might be on 134th and Mountain View, we don't show that as red. These are just the roadway segments. And this is something we discussed before, that roadway segments may not tell the whole picture. It's more or less where most people get delayed is at intersections or at a traffic signal. And so based on the Planning Commission's input, we went out and studied not only these segments, but also the intersections around the city and some of the key intersections. And so we listed the kind of the slowest or the heaviest delayed intersections in the city. And so the way that we evaluate intersections is similar to the way we evaluate kind of a segment of road. It's based on the delay. So how long is your car sitting there waiting to go through the traffic signal? And as a little perspective, this table kind of describes it. So basically up to a minute delay at a signal is considered a D or higher. And so that's what we consider acceptable, is a minute delay as you're sitting at the intersection. If it's over a minute delay, then we know there's some problems and some major congestion that we need to take care of. And so you can see our main intersections are where most of the traffic comes at, and this is at an evening peak hour, so about 5 to 6 p.m. when everyone's coming home from work. We're seeing some delays on our major intersections, such as 126th and Mountain View. That sees a lot of delay. It has a level of D servicing a lot of the movements, and by movements we mean if you're going through the intersection, turning left at the intersection, turning right at the intersection. Those are all different movements. And so we broke it down by if you're going westbound through the intersection, if you're going eastbound through the intersection, eastbound turning right. And that's what that shows kind of there in that bottom left table. And we see that on kind of the worst intersection is 126th South and Mountain View corridor. There is some delay in there. There's when you're going westbound left, so turning left when you're traveling west really does have a significant delay of 63 seconds. And so sometimes we imagine that we are waiting in our car for hours in traffic. And in some cases, maybe we are waiting for quite a while. But when you keep it in perspective of kind of a delay of a minute on your whole travel, that's what we're seeing in our peak hour times in our traffic signals in Herriman City. And so are there any questions on that before we move on? I know that was kind of a topic to discuss last time we
Yeah, I
talked
got
about
a
it.
question. I do, Bryce. So is this level of service that you're talking about in delays, is this current year or is this 2030, 2050? What are we looking at here?
Oh, yeah, that's a great, so we actually did this study at the beginning of this year, so 2020. It was before the pandemic, and so we had kind of normal traffic flows at that time. But yes, this was done at the beginning of 2020.
Okay, so existing volumes. Okay.
Yep.
Hey, Bryce, I have a question. So when you look at the delay, I guess can you go a little more into depth as far as movement? What is that defined? Like 63 seconds from intersection, or like how close are you to the intersection before you move to a different road?
Right. So that's a great question. So what is that delay measuring? So when you pull up to a light, imagine you're coming to a traffic signal and it starts to turn yellow and red, or there's a line of cars already there. It's from the moment you start decelerating to the moment that you start accelerating again. So basically the delay that is decelerating stopped to that moment that you start accelerating again, if that makes sense. So
But that could also be if that's accelerating to be beyond the intersection as well. It could take, and this is average delay per vehicle, right? So is how this is measured.
yeah,
So-
exactly.
Let me ask a layman question then. So on 134th, during rush hour traffic, it takes an extra 10 minutes to get from Bangor through Mountain View corridor. How come it doesn't show that 10-minute delay here? It only says 1 minute.
Yeah, that's a great question. So that's 1 minute probably per signal that you're seeing. So in the process of getting on 134th all the way over to Bangor, you're probably seeing 5 or 6 signals that you're going through. And you're probably, yeah, right. And depending on where you get on 134th, you might see more or less. But in that process, each signal may have a minute delay there, right? So it adds up, just like you said, to be that 6 to 10 minute extra time just to get to Bangor Highway.
So it's getting it. So I'm getting a D 10 times is what I'm getting is 10 Ds.
Yeah, yep. That's basically, and again, that's only at rush hour, right? So if you were to go on the road at noon in midday, you would be getting a level of service A, and you would probably reduce your time, just like you said, by about 6 to 10 minutes. And so, yeah, that's the worst time of the day. We're seeing a level of service D, and that's kind of the idea, is that in your worst, heaviest time of traffic, we should at least have a level of service D.
So with 134, because I mean that definitely maybe, and it's probably the next slide or something like that. But what are the plans for 134?
Yeah, that's a great question. So again, we started this model a year ago, and we've already got new plans for 134th since we began this update. But we can just jump into that. So in the future here shortly, we don't have an exact time, but we do plan to carry 7 lanes through to the west side of Mountain View corridor. So right now we have 7 lanes on the Riverton side all the way up to Mountain View. And then on the Herriman side, it comes down to 5 lanes. And by 5 lanes, I mean 2 in each direction and a center turn lane. It gets a little bit different when you're actually at the intersection with double lefts, but this is away from the intersection the Riverton side is 7 lanes up to the intersection, and then on the Herriman side, we have 5 lanes. And by Riverton side, I mean east of Mountain View Corridor, and by Herriman side, I mean west of Mountain View Corridor. And so that's where we're seeing a lot of necking come down to the signal. We also know that the signal isn't the most efficient way that a signal should be set up, with kind of a double signal right next to each other. And so that helps, I mean, that hurts us a little bit. But there are plans to move from the 5-lane cross section to a 7-lane cross section here pretty shortly, to be able to accommodate traffic all the way through from Bangerter to 5200 West.
Can we go to a map just so you can maybe can drag the mouse across the portion of this 134 you're talking about?
Yeah. Bryn, do you know, am I able to take control of the screen?
Never, Bryce, never. I am controlling. But I
Relinquish
can show you.
control.
So it'll be on 134. I think this is right, Bryce. From Mountain View up to 52, which is the Jimmy John's. Nope, McDonald's.
Yeah. So 52 is just west of the Jimmy John's, and right before the Solar Mirror Townhomes area.
Yeah.
So basically, we'll carry the 7 lanes through the business section, and then once it gets to the residential area, it'll go back to the 5-lane section. And so that's coming soon to hopefully alleviate some of that peak hour traffic.
Okay. Because I was just, in my mind, I was wondering how that was going to affect everything, but it makes a lot more sense, because I was thinking of 5200. No, I was thinking of going up to Rosecrest, and I was like, if you're going 7 lanes up to Rosecrest, that takes, in my mind, it would take sidewalks out and things like that. So I was really curious what this was going to be.
Yeah, that's a good point. We looked at the traffic, and this was really a joint project with Riverton, and it's not even a widening of the road per se as widening the curb and gutter. We are just restriping the road. Right now, we have wide enough shoulders that we can implement more lanes without widening the road.
So we're going to take because I do see in some of those areas, and honestly, I'm probably thinking farther up by Jimmy John's and things like that, but I do see parking that is done along the north side of that road. Is that going to be taken away? Is that what you're saying?
So in the business section, yes, it will be. But as far as where those townhomes are, just west of Jimmy John's, where you probably see most of the parking.
Yeah, that is where I see most of it.
That will not be affected. There are some thoughts to put some bike lanes along there, and we're still working that out. But as far as the 7-lane cross section, that's only planned to go as far as the business section is, so to 5200 West, and then kind of slim down to the section that we have now in front of both the townhomes on the Herriman side, and then on the south side of the road, they're even single-family homes on the Riverton side. And so in discussions with Riverton, it was decided that was as far as we would take the 7-lane section.
So it goes 7 lanes and end at the Jimmy John's. That road right there is where it would end 7 lanes, and then it would go down to 5 lanes.
Yes, that's exactly right.
Okay, so I'm guessing the 7 lanes, so the far right lane will become a turn-only lane that then breaks it down to the 5 lanes.
They can turn right into Herriman Town Center at that point.
Correct.
Yep.
So that's what I'm guessing. All right.
Yep, that's right.
And but looking at this map, I guess there's one other area that's that yellow, and is that past it? I mean, it's tough for me to see.
Yeah, so I'll explain this a little bit. So this is our traffic model projected to the year of 2030. And this is our traffic versus capacity of the road. And this is a scenario of traffic in 2030 if we did nothing. If we did no improvements, what are the roads going to look like? And so the red is failing, where they're completely over capacity. Orange is at capacity and major delays. And then the more greenish yellow is at an acceptable level of service, and then green is at a C level of service or better. And so you kind of see if we did no improvements, but the land use projections held strong, we would have some major delays in some areas. And that's where the red and the orange kind of show through.
And so, I mean, the other big problematic area that you're predicting based off of these studies is in front of the actual city building, right?
Herriman Highway. Yeah.
Is that what that
Yeah,
is?
so, yeah, exactly. That's Main
It goes
Street.
back to Bacchus Highway.
Yeah, that connects all the way out Herriman Highway out to Bacchus Highway. And it would be my guess that they're showing a lot of growth along that area. We've already seen some of that growth starting to take place this year, but yeah, that's exactly right. That's where a lot of the models showing we need either a widened roadway or new network to divert the traffic on.
Now, I mean, in order to widen that road, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, do we have enough of a lip or area that will allow that without taking the sidewalks out? Because I know there's a rec center, the city building, and the additional school that's right in that area. So the sidewalks are pretty key in that area.
All right. Yeah, that's a good question. So as far as the Main Street section in front of City Hall by the library and the rec center, that isn't as in bad condition as where it kind of goes down to one lane in each direction and then a center turn lane. So
Okay, so past 6,000
about.
about.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yep. And you
I
kind
have
of see.
trouble seeing actually where we're at on this a little bit. Sorry.
Yeah, west of the Quality gas station is where it gets bad.
Right.
Okay. So that's 5,600.
And you can kind of see it this way, that the model projects what we call that a 3-lane road where it's one in each direction and then a center turn lane. It's projecting that the traffic will be above the capacity of that road, so we'll need to kind of match the lanes that we have in front of City Hall with the kind of four lanes or 5 lanes with if you're counting the center turn lane.
So we're expecting, and granted, I know some of that already has homes until you get up to the road that turns to Butterfield. I can't remember which road that is, but I mean, you have homes along both sides in some of that area, and then once you get up to the road that turns into Butterfield, it opens up a little bit land-wise. So I know we're having new developments go in, so it'll be a little bit easier to negotiate the widening of the roads and the sidewalks and bike trails and everything else. But what is the plan between the road that goes to Butterfield and 5600 that has some homes that are right on the road? I mean, because that, granted, it has sidewalks on both sides. Are we looking at needing to take how far back, or do we have enough of a?
You're talking historic Herriman?
Yeah, it's a lot of historic Herriman, and then a little bit, and I guess it could still be considered historic Herriman, but a little bit past it too has got the same issue. There's just, I mean, you got homes on both sides of the road, and so
right.
Pretty large, wide parking strip though.
Yeah, so I mean, is that the plans of taking that parking strip off? I mean, I guess I'm just trying to figure out because realistically, it looks like it's 134, 131, and 123 or 26, I guess, out here is the 3 that may be the problems with the additional building that's going on west of us.
Yeah. So that's a great point. So part of it is widening the road out to and in a lot of areas we actually have the right of way. We can do that without destroying the sidewalk. In some cases, it may be we have to look at removing curb and gutter and sidewalk. We're working on that right now to be able to have full right of way for that road to have its full capacity built out. That's one aspect of it, but another aspect of it is creating alternate routes. And so again, this is if we did nothing, this is what happens. At the end, we'll show 2030, if we implement the changes that we want with some more north to south travel and some other alternate routes, that kind of opens us up to have a little bit more room on Main Street and some of the other roads.
Like 6400, we were planning on going north
Yes.
118, correct?
Yes, exactly. That's kind of perfect example.
Okay, I'm just I know that, and I'm not sure everyone who's listening, but I know that a lot of the areas that people worry about are these areas that obviously are in red, and 134 tends to be an area as well that gets talked about a lot already, and so I think really touching on the areas and what's happening in those is probably the most um, useful for us, and trying to figure out what's happening there, because that makes it to where this makes a lot more sense to me. So I appreciate it. I do have two other questions, and I know you have a ton of slides you can still go through. um, but my other question is the public transportation, tracks and other, because you may have another graph or chart that shows some of that. Just curious how that lays out in the city.
Yeah, I believe we do have a slide. Let's see, I'm just looking. I can't remember if we included it in the slide. It is in the transportation plan. And yes, it's actually the very last slide. So we'll get to the transit at the end. Or yeah, Brent, if you want to jump there now, it's the very last slide.
Because I know it's pretty limited right now out here, a lot of the public transportation.
Yes, exactly. So this is kind of a little bit of a picture. So that purplish color is the planned transit route that we have right now. That is really up to UTA and Wasatch Front if they're able to fund that. But we have on our end saved the corridor, the space for it to go in. If it's a tracks line, if it's a rapid bus line, whatever it is, we've created the right of way for that line to go in, and we actually have the full right of way right now that a tracks line could go on to that route that we show there. And
Okay,
that's what
so that is
Front,
planned well. Okay.
and so we're ready for it. Again, it's really up to UTA and Wasatch Front. We can try to push them a little bit, but when that tracks line, or it may be a rapid bus line that comes through that area.
Okay. And then other question I have is just, and I know it's on here. You did a very good, thorough job, but the actual bike trails, just how that's laid out. Because I know some of my hopes is eventually having a similar feel to Provo Canyon going through Butterfield with the bike trails, and so obviously that'll take years and years, but if it's not planned, it won't ever happen, and so that's what I want to make sure some of that is planned out to where at least from our perspective, it's something we hope to see and we plan to see. Now, whether it takes 10 years or 50 years to get there, that's a whole nother thing. So,
yeah, and so this slide shows a little bit of our plans to include bike lanes and bike paths in the future. We know, just like you said, we have some recreational areas outside of the city and in the city that are very popular. And one of the things that we're doing is, again, we've received funds to create an active transportation plan. So it goes beyond just this. It kind of goes to more specifics on how we're going to connect to those recreational facilities. It takes a kind of account of the public where they want to see bicycle and pedestrian facilities. And so we just are receiving that funding this summer to create even a separate plan for the bicycle and the pedestrian infrastructure in the city. And we're hoping to coordinate with Riverton and even Salt Lake County to the west of us to be able to connect that network all around us, if that makes sense.
yeah, no, absolutely. I know some of it looks a little bit incomplete with what I'm looking at, because I know we do have one now in between 118 and Herriman Boulevard that goes underneath Mountain View Corridor. That I mean, it might be that green slash line. I can't tell. But we do have a bicycle path that goes under there now that is existing, and obviously that's brand new. And then also, don't we have a proposed bike trail? And I always forget what that little canal and or drainage on the east side. Yeah, on the east side of all of the Real Salt Lake property. Don't we have that
Yeah,
planned as well?
yeah,
Okay.
that's a good point. And Bryn, you can talk a little bit to this, but with the new development that's coming in there up against the canal, we do plan to have a shared path up against the canal there.
Yeah, like we
Okay.
just approved with Mountain Ridge, and then that goes all the way back behind RSL. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. But yeah, no, I appreciate this, and it just seems like, I mean, yeah, really, you're answering most of my questions. Probably easier with some of this to have the planning commission ask questions because I know we've looked at a lot of this that you provided, and then I do need to open the public hearing, um, probably at some point.
Okay, yeah, we'll jump through this. Kind of the main slide I want to show is the facilities plan. So yeah, right there. So this is kind of going back to what you were talking about. Where are we widening the road in the future? Where are we building new roads in the future? So we broke it down into 3 phases. Phase 1 is within the next 10 years. Phase 2 is in the next 20 years, so 2031 to 2040. And then phase 3 is 2041 to 2050. So on the map, phase 1 is blue, phase 2 is green, and phase 3 is yellow. And so if it's dotted, that's a new road. If it's solid, that's a widening of the road. And so,
Bryce, I got some questions on this.
yes, go ahead, Andy.
Just real quick though, on table 12 that corresponds with this in the document, there's some typos in the costs. So make sure those get cleaned up before they go to city council. But
Okay.
and then also you were mentioning Main Street, for instance. I don't see that on the map for an improvement. Once you get, between 56th and 64, you show a little bit beyond 64, but we talked about that one being, a high level of service. But yet there's nothing shown to be improved on Main Street between those sections, right through there.
Yeah. Yeah.
The
exactly.
west side there is, but nothing between 56th and 64th.
Yeah, and that's a good point. So what we looked at as we modeled the data, and obviously the model is not perfect. It may not show exactly what will be happening. But as we built out our network on the west side with those north-south, all those dots that go through areas that aren't necessarily in Herriman City, and then 64th West and 60th West, widening that out, and then connecting north and south, it allowed a lot of the traffic to dissipate to other roads. The main reason that road was seeing the traffic is because there were no other alternate routes.
Okay.
And so with these new facilities, we do model the traffic once these facilities are built. And so on go 2 slides ahead, Bryn, if you would. So this is what it looks like with that phase 1 project. So not all of the projects, but those projects that were part of the phase 1 improvements. This is what it looks like. So there is still a little bit of orange, a little bit of red, but we've dissipated a lot of the red off of Main Street and onto Herriman Boulevard or up to 118. And so that's how we address the Main Street. Like you said, there's only so much widening we can do in that section without really disturbing homes or other areas. And so that is what our network looks like that we plan and the level of service that we were aiming for. There is still a little bit of congestion in that area, Andy, like you were talking about, but we do see the red go away for the most part.
So something else I noticed, there's some of these that figure next to the capital plan is not included in the document. It'd be nice to see that. If you go down to that slide that you just had, that listed out all your, keep going down that one. So I don't see that graphic. I see the table, but I don't see the graphic with it. That graphic was very helpful to correlate.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, and in the actual master plan, it does have a ton of pages, and so I do think the picture or the exhibits included in the master plan overall, the draft master plan, but it is a little bit hard to find, and maybe that's something that we can look at about bringing that more to the forefront of the plan.
Yeah, well, I'm looking right next to the table, and it's not right next to the table. So.
Oh yeah, that's a good point. They're not on the same page, so that's something that we can take a look at.
All right.
Are you going to cover? Yeah, there you go. I was going to ask about that.
Yeah, and so our future signals, the gray areas where we have existing signals, blue are phase 1, again, next 10 years. Green is phase 2, next 20 years. And then yellow is next 30 years. So you can kind of get a view where we're going to need traffic signals in the future.
Okay. I guess the only question I have is, with the projected county project, do we have, have we included some of that in our projections?
Yeah, that's a great question. So as far as the development that's coming imminently just west of us, we began the study and the model before it was officially approved. And so this was with the assumption if the land use of kind of medium density, low to medium density out there. We know that's not going to be the case. And so we are planning to do an amendment to this plan as soon as we knew that Olympia Hills was approved. We knew we were going to have to amend this plan, but we had to create kind of a base to go off of. And we wanted to show the difference of what was zoned before and then what was approved with Olympia Hills, the kind of impact that had on our roads. So this is not accounting for Olympia Hills. And then as soon as we get this adopted, we're going to work on an amendment to this plan to show kind of the difference with Olympia Hills included in the model.
Because they have a lot of.
Yeah. What was that? Sorry.
Can we get the county to pay us for that amendment?
I'm on the engineering side, so that goes above me.
Good answer.
We get paid for the roads.
Well, I was going to say, there are going to be a lot of improvements, correct me if I'm wrong, that's tied to Olympia Hills, and some of the improvements have to come down through Herriman City. Am I right in that?
Right. Yeah, that's a correct assumption. When they were approved, there was a clause to the approval that they would have to improve certain traffic infrastructure even outside of their project. And a lot of the traffic, as we know, would flow into Herriman City. So we would assume that would come to Herriman City. Again, I'm not involved in those discussions, so I don't actually know kind of where the money's at on that and whatnot. I really just deal with the engineering side of it.
So from the engineering side of it, with the amendment, is that going to, I'm assuming we're going to plan in some accordance in routing a lot of the traffic to 118 or certain roads specifically? Is that the plan?
Yeah, so the amendment will show a lot of the traffic's going to be planned on Herriman Boulevard, which turns into 126 at Mountain View Corridor. A lot of that has room for future growth, but that's kind of what the model's for, is we haven't been able to model that yet, and we want to see where the traffic goes and then make solutions based on that. A lot of it is intersection improvements, such as kind of a double left turn type of situation, or a free right at intersection. A lot of these are intersection improvements. But yes, it does seem that we're going to have to take a look at how we can solve that problem with either widening or alternate routes.
I have a question. What's the impact if we waited for the amendment? Because to me, I look at this and I see, phase 2 has a couple signals, and you're saying that it's going to change some of the roads, possibly.
Let me just say, I think part of the issue we've had is we've been working on this for a while, and as you guys know better than anybody, we're growing so tremendously fast.
Yeah.
And like Bryce said, we had to just draw a line in the sand and move forward because new developments kept coming in, and then we say, well, do we add that one? Do we add that one? Do we? So we had to just. So I would say I think we need to move forward with this definitely, and then we have no idea what will happen west or anywhere else, honestly. So I think we just have to move forward. And because we have to adopt the master plan in order to update our impact fee, and our impact fee is in need of an update. So we really just have to start somewhere, and it is frustrating because we'll likely have to do it again in a year. But that's just the nature of being a fast growing community, I think, is that we're just going to have to deal with those updates as they come.
And this is just a recommendation to the city council. And so as we make a motion to make a recommendation, I do think we probably want to recommend a certain amount of items that they look at and consider, and make sure they take into consideration while they're going through their approval process. Because I do know there's a couple areas that Andy's brought up, and then also just simple things that could be amended, such as an updated bike path, because I know we have quite a few new things that have been added on there, but there's a handful of things just we can recommend that they be updated to give the council a better idea of at least where some of the stuff is, and then also to recommend that they look into certain items to see if they can make a little better preparation for future things. But at the same time, I do agree it has to move forward.
Hey, real quick before you leave this slide, Bryce, I did find that spot where that capital or the recommended street improvement by phase, but it's actually a duplicate of this particular figure. You got this figure in here twice. So figure 51, take a look at that. That's where that figure should be, and it's not. You've got this duplicated. So
okay, yeah, I'll note that. You said figure 51.
Figure 51.
Okay.
I had a question for staff. So for the most part, we're looking more at traffic signals and not roundabouts, right?
So yeah, at our major intersections, we do look at roundabouts kind of where there's less traffic, and there are multi-lane roundabouts that can accept more traffic, but in general, that's been kind of the way we've dealt with intersections and the way we were planning on. But there is an opportunity to look at roundabouts in certain areas where maybe instead of a signal, it can be a roundabout, but that is an opportunity to look kind of in the less high traffic areas. I think that's something we can look at.
Okay, in my opinion, I would think a signal would be better than a roundabout in most circumstances, but I guess in a neighborhood or something, maybe a roundabout might, in a lower traffic neighborhood, like you were saying, maybe a roundabout might be better.
I agree with you, Andrea, in the sense of I think some of our neighboring cities have shown that roundabouts have not made sense.
Right, yeah.
As they've been taking them out.
Yeah, exactly.
And so, I mean, my opinion and recommendation would be to try not to do roundabouts, but obviously there may be reasons why it could make sense in certain areas.
Thanks, Chris. Yeah.
I think when considering roundabouts and so forth, you also want to think about land use in the particular area. instead of just putting a roundabout to replace a light, but actually considering how land is used in a particular area.
Exactly. Yeah, they have their purpose and they have their, you know, their place in the system, but yeah, not everywhere. That's for sure.
I have a question about the amendment. Do you guys have like an estimated time frame of when the master plan be amended?
So no, not at this time. We've been working to get this approved first, and then once this gets approved, then we can work on the amendment. And so as soon as this gets approved, that's when we'll start working on it. This has taken about a year to get to this spot, and so from beginning to finish of that amendment, it may not be quite as intensive because we already have a good base and have most of our network modeled. We just have to add in a few land uses and whatnot, and so I would imagine that we could get on that amendment pretty quick after this is approved, if this is approved.
All right.
Thank you.
So at this time, and we can talk about it again after if we need to, I would like to open the public hearing. And I believe Wendy said there hasn't been any comments submitted. Is that correct?
That's correct. We have not received any comments for
All
item
right.
4.1.
Well, that makes it easy. Then at this time, we'll close the public hearing, and then we can go to the Planning Commission again for additional comments and to talk amongst us. I mean, a lot of what I'm thinking is, since this is a recommendation, to give the City Council maybe some recommendations to the city staff to either add or adjust or I guess make corrections on what we've seen may help them to make a better decision. I don't know what the rest of the city planning commission thinks, but I think a lot of what we need to look at is what recommendations do we need to include in this to have it be a little more complete for the city council to look at, if there are any. I'm seeing some
Can we
heads shake no.
Can we go back to the slide where it shows the cost of road improvements? So, and you said that there were some errors
Not-
they need to fix here.
No, not on here, but in the document itself, table 12. They've added some extra digits onto some of these numbers on the, you know, they'll see it as soon as they get there. There's more than three digits past a comma. So, yeah.
Oh, gotcha.
It's minor. I'm sure they just rounded it, just a rounding error. But
I'd like extra digits on some checks I
Well-
get too, though.
not if we're paying it though. So, yeah.
I think I have one last one I would like to look at. And I think it was the slide previous to this one where we had the 2030 with everything adopted. Or no, it was, yeah, when everything's been built for the next 10 years.
There you go.
Yeah, this one. There we go. So in this slide, the one place that is still quite red is the intersection of 126th and Mountain View. Can you talk about that one just a little bit?
Yeah, no problem. So this is a little bit interesting with the long range model, it's really good about projecting traffic on a segment of roadway or a straight roadway. But when it comes to intersections, that's when it gets a little bit iffy. But this is an interesting intersection because, as we know, Mountain View Corridor will become a freeway. We don't know at what point it'll be, if it's before or after this kind of segment of time. And so the freeway allows for ramps on and to and off of the freeway a lot better than the current signal does. I believe, and I don't know, Ian, if you know this answer, but I believe this is assuming that the freeway ramps were not installed at that point. And so if that's the case, it would be a major backup, and there wouldn't be a whole lot we could do about that at that point. And so that's why you're seeing red on both sides of Mountain View Corridor, is that the freeway ramps aren't showed as installed at that point.
Are we
So that's
certain
part-
that's the case?
What was that?
I don't think Mountain View is going to be built in the next 10 years. So
Well, that's just it. So, yeah, sometime it will be, but it is important to know if that's the case, because for this particular scenario, we need that. If we're showing red and Mountain View is considered to be in place, then there are issues. We need to address that. If they're not, I could see that being better, soon after we get Mountain View done. Does anybody know how this scenario was set up? Is Mountain View a freeway? Assumed.
Yeah. Ian, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Do you know when you guys ran the model, if that was assumed to be a freeway entrance with ramps or still signalized intersection?
I believe in 2030, the model does not include the ramps. So,
can we look at that 2050
Yeah, that's
build
going to be.
level of service?
Yeah. Yes.
So it's still red. Is that assumed that Mountain View is finished at that point?
Yes, that should assume by 2050 that Mountain View is finished at that point.
So that area has a problem on both 2030 and 2050.
Yes.
So, and I do know in that section right now, especially on the east side of Mountain View, they have that commercial lot next to the Maverick that is empty, meaning that if there needs to be some additional turn lanes or build out, there is possibilities of doing something. I would assume that we could negotiate or set up or do something to maybe mitigate this. Maybe that is a problem area that needs to be looked at in further detail.
And I thought I had heard, maybe I'm wrong, that, with Riverton City as well, that they are planning on making 126 South a 7-lane, right? Is that true? Is that the future plans for 126?
Right.
Between
Right.
Bangor and Mountain View, right?
Yeah, exactly. So that is part of the plans. I'm not 100% familiar with the plans, but there are discussions of making 126 a flex lane road, similar to I can't remember which road it is. 54th West.
Taylorsville.
So that peak hour traffic gets a lot of flow in one direction, right? And so in the mornings you'll have more going east, in the afternoons and evenings you'll have more lanes going west. And so that is in discussion. That's with UDOT and Riverton and with Herriman. We're all trying to kind of find a solution to 126 in the future. That's where we see most of the traffic ending up on a east to west basis. And so that is something that we're looking at, how we can solve that problem once we get the freeway in. Is that going to cause more traffic to come on and off quicker? And are we going to have to deal with signals failing at that point? That is something that we are looking at. The 2050 is really hard to trust the model.
I know.
2050 is really hard. We do our best to kind of fit what makes sense for 2050, but that's why we update these plans. Well, we try to at least every 5 years update these plans, and so that's just a kind of a perspective, is that we will be planning to get some updates for once Olympia Hills is modeled. We will try to do our best to keep this updated.
So quick question for you, Bryce. So then we've talked about 126, and I guess what is the assumption in 2050 under this one? Is there any of those improvements assumed to have been done and we're still in red in 2050? Maybe that's a question.
I don't know east of Herriman in the Riverton section if that's assumed as a 7-lane section. Ian, do you know the answer to that?
I'm not sure on 126th and Riverton, you mean?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, so we're saying these are all billed, and we know that there's issues that need to be done, and I think there's even some from the Olympia Hills that will be taking care of some of these issues, but I don't know if all these have been incorporated. And so that's probably, Chris, getting back to your comment, we probably this is a recommendation to city council. We need to just make sure that, and maybe that has to be done in the amendment or whatever, but we need to make sure when we're looking at these build levels of service, that they do incorporate all of the improvements that are planned out there.
So maybe our recommendation includes a note that we will have a further, as they look at Olympia Hills, that they also concentrate on that intersection of 126th and Mountain View.
Yeah, and it may be just that they haven't incorporated what the improvements are in the model, you know, and that's why we're seeing what we're seeing right now on this figure. So we just need to make sure that what's saying is being built is actually being built.
And I think the bigger problem is the 23rd projection that
Yeah.
it's in red. I mean, 2050 obviously is way far out. I only wanted to look at it because I was curious if that was taking in consideration Mountain View was built out. And
Right.
so, but 2030, with it being in red, the question is there some potential solutions? Because that is an area that obviously looks like will be a major problem.
Yep, and from what I'm hearing, Bangor Highway is going to get built out before they come back. You know, they want to get the freeway section of Bangor all the way to 201 before they come back and put in the freeway for Mountain View. So it's going to be some time until that happens.
I've heard of it discussed, like one of those express lanes they have in Lehigh by Traverse Mountain. I don't know if you can talk about that at all. Where there's like one lane going each way.
None of those are planned here. This is the frontage road through our city. These are frontage roads, and the freeways will be in the median after, you know, when it's all built out. There will not be the express lanes on this facility.
I was just talking about like 126.
A commuter lane, there wouldn't be room for that.
Okay.
Yeah, the bypass line.
All right. Guys, do you have any additional questions though? Additional comments? Or are we ready to make a recommendation or make a motion for a recommendation to the city council?
Yeah. I'm ready to make a motion unless there's any other comments, I guess. All right, I'll go ahead and make a motion to recommend approval of the of item 4.1, the revised Herriman City Transportation Master Plan. Recommend approval to the City Council, but with some recommendations to the City Council. First, make sure that as we're looking at these build scenarios, which is 2030, I'm not worried about 2050, but for 2030, that we're accurately looking at what the build environment will be when we're looking at this. And then also make sure that we do updates accordingly to the bicycle layouts and the trail system as well. We know there's updates, and so maybe that can be accommodated with the amendment that's going to be taking place as well. So,
all right, motion by Andy. Is there anything else, Andy? Or is that it?
I hope not, no.
Okay. All right, motion by Andy.
I'll second.
Second by Lauren. And we'll call for a vote. Lauren?
Yes.
Jackson?
Yes.
Andy?
Yes.
Joy?
Yes.
Andrea?
Yes.
And Brody?
Yes to that.
All right, thank you guys. Now, is there any other commission comments that need to be made at this time?
Just curious if there's any more thoughts as to how much further we'll be doing. I know we're starting to open up a little bit. Is there any discussions as to when maybe we are back together and not doing it virtually?
I'm gonna bring up the same thing. I have no updates, but Wendy may know better if Wendy is still on and wants to. I think it's gonna be a while, unfortunately.
That's fine. I was just curious. I like eating dinner.
I figure if 2 more people can come, we'll stay 6 feet apart with how it's set up. So, okay.
All right.
With no other comments, then future meetings will be City Council meeting May 27th. And then future Planning Commission meeting will be June 4th, 2020. And then the next city council after that will be June 10th, 2020. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion made by Lauren. All in favor?
Aye.
Hi,
All right. Thank you, guys. Have a good night.
thank you. Good night.